तत्सवितुर्वरं रूपम् ज्योतिः परस्य धीमहि यन्नः सत्येन दीपयेत्। ॐ तत्सवितुर्वरं रूपम् ज्योतिः परस्य धीमहि यन्नः सत्येन दीपयेत्। ॐ तत्सवितुर्वरं रूपम् ज्योतिः परस्य धीमहि यन्नः सत्येन दीपयेत्। ॐ तत्सवितुर्वरं रूपम् ज्योतिः परस्य धीमहि यन्नः सत्येन दीपयेत्। ॐ
Welcome everyone. Let us start.
Good evening. Good evening.
So I hope we don't mind going very slow because I thought it's a very nice maybe opportunity for with these lines that we are reading. Otherwise, one so take today also. I hope slowly and explore lines in great. Speaking for you also. Okay. How is it for you, Raviji? Is my
No, it's breaking. Now it's okay, but it was breaking. It was breaking.
okay?
Yes. Hopefully, yeah. We'll caution you, ma'am. We'll caution you in case it breaks again.
Okay. So we'll start from these lines, new lines this time. We have taken overlap a couple of times, so let us start from these new lines. On page number 80, the last few lines we are going to start from. So anyone who feels ready can maybe unmute and read.
Yeah. In a divine retreat from mortal thought, in a prodigious gesture of soul sight, his being towered into pathless heights, naked of its vesture of humanity.
So I think for most of us and most of the times, we consider mortal thought as the ultimate. We don't admit that we consider it the ultimate. All of us, we unknowingly, we rely just too much on our thoughts. But how to access the other possibilities of our consciousness is the question. And for that, a divine retreat from cannot be escaped. We have to our sense mind. We can't be limited Analytical mind, believing all our thoughts to be true. Okay, so I'm going to just maybe shift my connection. It'll take a moment, but I'll be back. So let me just shift my connection. Can you hear me, anyone?
Clear. You got you loud and clear.
So I was sharing that we will have to retreat from mortal thought all the times we are thinking, and believing our thoughts to be true. Being in that domain, we cannot have access to higher domains of consciousness, which is our birthright. So in this case, Ashwapati is almost doing a divine retreat. He's withdrawn from the mortal thought, the narrow lane of human thought. He is withdrawn from that in a prodigious gesture of soul sight. And when we withdraw from that, it's not that we enter just an emptiness which doesn't know anything. We enter into soul knowing, a knowing just that knows. So there is no logic to that, there is no rationality to that. Maybe at times there may be a logic, but it is much more than logic, much more than our analytical mind. And it's not linear, so we can't just make a formula out of it. So when he retreated from mortal thought, when he let go of believing too tightly in thoughts and feelings, then he was into stepping back into his soul consciousness, soul sight, the direct knowing. In a prodigious gesture of soul sight, his being towered into pathless heights. Pathless heights. In Mother's play, which is called Ascent of Truth, there are many people who are going to climb a mountain, and all of them, the mother shares how all of them are just more or less tightly sticking to their opinions, their thoughts about the path. And all of them at one or the other stage, they have to retreat back. They like say that I can't go further than this. But there is only one couple, like two seekers on the path. They are the ones who are really seeking after truth, and they are the ones who can go up till the end of that mountain. And finally, when they can't see any path, there is nothing that they can see, they are able to make a leap of faith. Like they can't see, they may fall, they are maybe risking it, they may just die, but they say that since we are seekers of truth, and nothing else we want but truth, so let us see when we take this leap of faith what happens. And then they enter into something beautiful, something different, which cannot be imagined, which the logical mind cannot imagine. So these are pathless heights. There is no path, already charted territory. And that's why we love those adventures, although they are at times risky, fear may come, anxiety may come, but we love those adventures which are full of surprise and new happenings. We don't know what may happen. While if a path is already set, it becomes very monotone, it becomes very dull. So that's how the soul unfolding happens, that whenever we listen to our inner calling without getting into the trap of the temptations and glitters all around us, then it's like a unfolding which is beyond our imagination. We can't predict that path. So his being, his whole being towered, he's touching those heights of soul consciousness. There is no formula to that. Naked of its vesture of humanity. So vesture is something like a clothing, like an overcoat or something that you wear. Earlier we came across lines where it was vestibules of the unseen. So vestibule is a place where you take off your overcoat, and then enter another area. So that narrow corridor. So vesture of humanity is clothing of humanity. That ignorance and death and mortality, all that kind of a jacket that we are all wearing, thinking that we are that. He was able to put it off. He was naked of that clothing. So no clothing was there, naked of its vesture of humanity. And only when we can retreat from our mortal thought, only when we stop believing in our thoughts may still continue. We don't have to stop thoughts. Thoughts may still go on, feelings may still go on, bad moods, etc. may still go on, but we stop to follow their dictates. We know that they are just passing clouds, and we don't have to buy into them so rigidly. We don't have to believe into those dictates. So that's how we retreat from our mortal sense mind, analytical, conceptual mind. One will have to do that. Yes. Yeah, any comments here? Any reflections? Anyone? I was also reminded of how in the movie, these movies that come nowadays, Hulk, when Hulk is a regular fellow and when he suddenly grows into Hulk, like too big, how his being, as if it towers physically, it becomes bigger and bigger, and how his normal clothing is torn apart. It is not of no use anymore. And also another reference is how a spaceship shoots into the space, and along with the spaceship there are like supporting parts and accessories. And when the gravity, they have gone beyond the gravity of the earth, then the thing is shed off, like all the supporting supports, they're not needed anymore. So that's how I could maybe relate that naked of vesture of humanity, naked of its vesture of humanity. So now that is not needed anymore. That may be needed when the ego was developing, and one has to become an individuality, temporary individuality. But now when we grow into soul consciousness, then all these limitations, suffocations, all these obligations, they are not necessary. Those laws are not valid anymore. Just like on a spaceship, when it goes out of gravity, gravity doesn't rule that spaceship. Yeah. So I'm just moving ahead. If in case any reflection is there, please share. Yeah. Anyone who wants to go next?
Yeah, Monica, I'll read. I'll go.
Yeah, can anyone hear me? I don't know what's wrong today. Maybe there was something wrong with Sharda.
We can hear you now.
Monica? I'm not able to hear.
Radhaji, you can read. Can
Yeah.
you hear me? You can please read. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. As thus it rose to meet him bare and pure, a strong descent leaped down, a might, a flame, a beauty half visible, with deathless eyes, a violent ecstasy, a sweetness dire, enveloped him with its stupendous limbs, and penetrated nerve and heart and brain, that thrilled and fainted with the epiphany. His nature shuddered in the unknown's grasp.
Yeah, thank you. So if there is any problem with the connection, please let me know. I hope it works. So, Professor Nadkarni has shared that there are the most difficult three words in Savitri. They are he, she, and it. So it's difficult to find out what Sri Aurobindo refers to when he shares he, she, and it. So here comes an it, as thus it rose to meet him bare and pure, a strong descent leaped down, a might, a flame. And this also is very unusual, how Sri Aurobindo in the second line has used a full stop in between. So it's one of many rare occasions when he has used something like this. I think what I heard is that's to make it more impactful, that in the same line he's using a full stop in between, and then beginning with another line on the same line. So it is Ashupati's being here, that Ashwapati's being rose to meet him bare and pure, the higher truth, the divine consciousness. He arose, his being arose, his being towered into pathless heights so that it could meet the divine consciousness. And as we know with Mother and Sri Aurobindo, that they share that as there is a ascent from below, parallelly there is also a descent that comes down. So whenever there is a call from below, from the lower nature, from our consciousness, ordinary consciousness, all the time a descent stoops down to answer that call. So a strong descent leaped down in order to respond to Ashwapati's call, a might, a flame, a beauty half visible with deathless eyes, a violent ecstasy, a sweetness dire, enveloped him with his stupendous limbs. So, as if like a mighty being, a divine, humongous, mighty being is enveloping, and it has limbs also. Like he's enveloping Ashwapati's being into his stupendous limbs. Imagine being embraced by a divine being who is endless, infinite, and he also has limbs that you can feel. So, and very strong intensity that Ashupati is not fully able to bear, because here it shares in the last line, his nature shuddered in the unknown's grasp, because for some time, as if Ashupati wasn't able to take it, so much of sweetness, that kind of intensity of bliss, ecstasy, beauty, a might, a flame. So much of power at once, so much of beauty at once, so much of sweetness and love at once. Ashupati's nature was not fully able to take it. So that's why the word shuddered here, that it, as if the being trembles, being touched by such mighty grace. And here, as if a powerful charge of divinity flooded Ashupati. And why? Because now he's preparing for it. He's ready as a container. He has been calling, and he's been wanting nothing but this. So patrita, in Hindi we use this word patrita. When the container is ready, it's becoming ready and ripe. And Kabir ji also shares this in one of the couplets, where he shares that ऊंचे पानी ना टिके नीचे ही ठहराए, जो नर ऊंचा होई रहे प्यासा ही मर जाए. So a lot of humility and groundedness along with all that seeking. In arrogance, divine grace cannot dawn in, because there is hardly any space in the container. It's all full of me, 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 me. So one has to become totally empty of the mortal trappings which Ashupati is able to shed off. And now when the being is empty, the instrument is ready, then the divine grace can flood the instrument, because the instrument has prepared itself, the lower nature which usually is full of ignorance, impurities. He has been purifying, so that he can receive this divine inflow. Otherwise, how can one expect, when the cup is full, how can one expect something new and diviner to dawn? So when a favorable ground is there, then the divine inflow happens. Just like when they say, when the student is ready, the guru arrives, the teacher is there. So like that, we have to continue this aspect of purification. Yeah. Penetrated nerve and heart and brain, that thrilled and fainted with the epiphany. So epiphany means darshan, revelation. So the word fainted, that the being can't handle so much of power, grace, and beauty. Although it's full of thrill and ecstasy and beauty, and it's as if his mortal limbs are completely flooded with that divinity. So another point of transformation of nature, that one of the steps in the transformation. So I thought I'll use this opportune moment to maybe reflect upon Sri Aurobindo's words on ascent and descent. I think in one of the sessions, we may have touched upon Nolini Da's article on purification. So I'm not maybe taking it up again, although it's very, very relevant, I believe, in these lines, because that's how the ground is prepared, through purification. But right now, I thought I'll just take on some words from letters on yoga, ascent and descent. So before that, would anyone want to share any reflection here?
Yeah, just a small thought. You know how you just shared that when one is ready, the guru appears, and it's said quite strongly a lot of places. And yet, it's amazing that how each one of us is being looked after, right? Like as soon as I'm ready, the guru appears. Or, right now when we are reading this, it's not just Ashwapati, it could be anybody. So much attention, so much precision by the universe, and yet there are self-worth issues, and we feel lost, and it's like it just feels that how can we do this, that we would feel uncared for, or the despair or the confusion. Yeah, just that. Thank you.
Good point that you share. And along with that, we can see this reflection that everybody is looked after and cared for, and no matter how small, how big, how much ready, not ready. When we read anecdotes of mother looking after people in the ashram, each one, mother cared for, very precise, very much to exact precision. What is the need of this person? What is the need of that person? Would that be able to take this much of force? Would that one be able to, so whose psychic being needs what kind of nurture? So all this specific, details to each one being, as you shared, we see with mother's stories as well. And it's very, very comforting to see that each one is very, very special and unique. Yes, and very ordinary at the same time. That we may say that, oh, I am special, I called for and the divine answered. But like that, everyone is special to the divine, all of us children. So very important, very relevant. Yes. So although we are special, parallelly we are very ordinary. Each one of us is extraordinary, and parallelly we are very, very ordinary. So I think just like truth is a paradox, both things at the same time. Yeah. So I'm taking this moment to share with us Letters on Yoga 3, where he shares about ascent and descent. And since here we again see many experiences of how a call is made and how then the descent happens. So, and again in the coming few lines we will also see this dynamic aspect. So it's the static aspect of divine is, you know, when it's like we experience the calm and the silence and the stillness. That's the static aspect of Brahman. And then there is a dynamic aspect where it's like vigor, you know, energy and effectivity in the worldly life. So that dynamic quality is given to you. So that is the dynamic aspect of Brahman. So both we can see here in Savitri, the static aspect and the dynamic aspect. Earlier we saw that Ashwapati was touching the silences of the infinite, and then he did not just get stopped there, that okay, now I can settle down here, you know, how silent and beautiful. And Sri Aurobindo says that there is no end to these realizations. So we have to go beyond the static poise, and there we get into even, you know, a more effective and dynamic poise, which is activity, full of effective activity. So the dynamic poise of Brahman. So I would request if anyone can read this one for us.
I'll read. What I mean by the spiritual transformation is something dynamic, not merely liberation of the self or realization of the one, which can very well be attained without any descent. It is a putting on of the spiritual consciousness, dynamic as well as static, in every part of the being, down to the subconscient. That cannot be done by the influence of the self leaving the consciousness fundamentally, as it is with only purification, enlightenment of the mind and heart, and conscience of the vital. It means a bringing down of divine consciousness, static and dynamic, into all these parts, and the entire replacement of the present consciousness by that. This we find unveiled and unmixed above mind, life, and body, and not in mind, life, and body. It is a matter of the undeniable experience of many that this can descend, and it is my experience that nothing short of its full descent can thoroughly remove the veil and mixture and effect the full spiritual transformation.
Thank you. So here, I think we see that how Sri Aurobindo's yoga, Mother's yoga, we see that the liberation not of ego is the first step. Sri Aurobindo Nirvana, not last one, as in some other yogas. So what he shares, what I mean by spiritual transformation is something dynamic, not merely liberation of the self, of or realization of the one, which can very well be attained without any descent. It is a putting off on of the spiritual consciousness, dynamic as well as static, in every part of the being, down to the subconscient. So both aspects of the divine consciousness, the static aspect is that there is an immutable calm, there is absolute inner poise, stillness that you can access at any instance, stillness, peace, immobility, quietude. So all that is the static, immutable aspect. And then there is the force, Chit and Shakti, you know, both. So Shakti is the force aspect, that there is vigor in life, there is activity, effective activity, right action. So dynamic Brahman in life, both in every cell, every part of the being, down to the subconscious. So both these static and dynamic have to enter into each and every part of our being. That cannot be done by the influence of the self, leaving the consciousness fundamentally as it is, with only purification and enlightenment of the mind and heart and quiescence of the vital. So he's sharing that it is possible that the mind becomes quiet and enlightened, the heart and vital also become purified and quiet. Quiescence is a quietude, a stillness in the vital, non-aggression of energies. Now energies are not bothering up and down, up and down. But he says that our work doesn't end here with this quiescence of the vital and heart and the illumination of the mind. Our work doesn't end here. He says it means a bringing down of the divine consciousness, static and dynamic, into all these parts, yes, and the entire replacement of the present consciousness by that, including the physical one. So the physical consciousness is also totally touched by the quiet and the activity, the dynamic poise of the Brahman. Not only does it touch the mind and the vital, it also transforms the physical aspect. This we find unveiled and unmixed above mind, life, and body, and not in mind, life, and body. It is a matter of undeniable experience of many that this can descend. So usually whenever we have practical experiences of such purity, such dynamicity and staticity, he's saying that this usually is unveiled or revealed above mind, emotions, and body consciousness. But when we are again stationed back in the body consciousness, all the vikaras and ignorance and weaknesses of the body consciousness are still there. Nothing has transformed there. So when the being rises up, leaves mind, life, and body, gets stationed in a higher poise, which can happen with those of us who do sadhana. But when one comes back into the individual consciousness, there's hardly any change. So he's talking about entire transformation. So it is a matter of undeniable experience of many that this can descend. And it is my experience that nothing short of this full descent can thoroughly remove the veil and mixture and effect the full spiritual transformation. So I think Sri Aurobindo is like, he's saying that, yeah, it is good what you are doing. It is good what you are doing. But see, I am not satisfied with this. We are not here for this much. So when we have a master like that, I think we can't fall short. This keeps us going, whenever we have strict guides with us who take us towards perfection, then we are self-motivated, owing to their presence. So here Sri Aurobindo shares that we are not going to stop anywhere in between. That is not why we are here. So I feel that this is very inspiring and invigorating, that we are not getting stabilized at any intermediate zone, just going on and on and on. Yeah, anyone wants to share anything here? Okay, so I'm moving on. Now this, I would recommend everyone who are interested to go through this. It's very interesting how the ascent is happening, how the descent then happens. So I'm just touching upon it, but it would be nice if all of us individually can read in their own times. Yeah. So anyone, would you like to maybe read these two bits for us? A double movement in sadhana.
A double movement in the sadhana. There is a double movement in the sadhana. The divine consciousness, power, light, peace, descending into all the body, the consciousness from all parts of the body rising upwards to meet the divine consciousness above, the descent and the ascent. I should go, yeah. The sadhana is based on the fact that the descent of forces from the higher planes and an ascent of the lower consciousness to the higher planes is the means of transformation of the lower nature, although naturally it takes time and the complete transformation can only come by the supramental descent. Your experiences here are forms of the widening experiences of this process.
So I think again, with many of us, maybe it's not even required that we go through all these texts, but since we have the opportunity and it's all available with us and we can read and understand, reflect, maybe not really totally understand, but maybe reflect, I think it really supports us in our own journey as to many, at many locations we feel really lost and abandoned and not knowing which way to go, what is happening to us, am I doing anything wrong? So I think in these letters of Sri Aurobindo, which he has written from time to time, answering queries from different sadhaks, it's somehow I feel you feel a kind of a belonging there, that you are being answered and taken care of. So we see here two movements, the consciousness from all parts of the body rising upwards to meet the divine consciousness above. So I think this is very important because it's not possible that parallelly I keep on being friends with my vital demands, the demands of the ego consciousness, and parallelly I'm also, asking mother, show me the light. Also that can happen. That also divine takes care of, and even when we are doing that, I think we are shown the way. But mother shares that in the book The Mother, which Sri Aurobindo has written, he shares that if the divine meets all the demands of your vital and ego consciousness, then the very purpose of the divine being there is defeated. So there has to develop a certain purity in the being, that now I don't want to listen to the demands of ego consciousness. Give me the higher light, show me the higher light, which way to go. So that is the ascent, that consciousness from all parts of the body. For example, even when we have physical pain or physical illness, there, the physical cells, not only in illness, in generally also in health also, we can, as if the whole parts of the body, the cells of the body, they are asking for more light, more truth, radiance. So they are rising up and wanting to unite with the divine consciousness. So when this arises, then we have the divine consciousness, power, light, peace descending into all the body. He's not just saying the mind and life, but also mind, vital, and the body. So that's the true transformation. Yeah. So he shares that, of course, this can happen, that lower nature rises up into the higher planes, but the complete and full transformation cannot happen without the descent, the supramental descent, because uh, one is not able to sustain to that height. So the descent has to happen for complete transformation, and that is why we keep remembering the mother, because things are such that we will not be able to understand all this by our, the sense mind, the limited mind that we have. So although we can have a bit of uh, mastery over our aspiration, we can keep aspiring and wanting more light, truth, and clarity in life, purity in life. But parallelly, we remember the mother, so that, as mother shares, that I will do the yoga for you. You just open yourself to me. Keep opening yourself to me. Keep opening and keep giving yourself to me, and rest I will take care. So I think that really, really, really makes the path relatively very, very easy for us. Relatively, not that easy, because even remembering the mother, we know how much we faltered there. So yeah. So there are many instances here. You can see some of them also may feel repetitive, since they are given to different sadhaks at different times. So again, we see ascent of consciousness to the higher planes, descent of the power of higher planes into the earth consciousness, so as to drive out the power of darkness and ignorance and transform the nature. It's as if I have a mug, and the mug is having a little bit of drain water, and although I have emptied, but the drain water still sticks to the mug. So what happens because of this aspiration? A descent of pure white water, like a tremendous flow of pure water, comes into that mug, and it comes so powerfully that it wipes off the drain water completely by its fullness, since the cup is relatively empty now. So that's how it down kind of descends and then drives out the power of darkness and ignorance and transforms the nature. But the constant emptying of cup, as much as I can do consciously, I think that is what we can do. Rest, which is sticking and not going, that the descent will take care of. Yeah. Okay, so I'm just stopping it here, not overwhelming or bombarding with too much. Yeah. So this is how this is happening. Thrilled and fainted with the epiphany, his nature shuddered in the unknown's grasp. Yeah, we'll go further. Yes, anyone who feels ready can please unmute and read.
May I? In a moment shorter than death, longer than time, by a power more ruthless than love, happier than heaven, taken sovereignly into eternal arms, hailed and cursed by stark absolute bliss. In a whirlwind circuit of delight and force, hurried into unimaginable depths, upborne into immeasurable heights, it was torn out from its mortality and underwent a new and boundless change.
So the knowledge that is there, that when for like past, that human sense of time was lost. It's as if he has entered into a different dimension altogether. In a moment shorter than death and longer than time. And why it appears, although it's a very rapid moment, but it appears very long because of the intensity of the descent. It's just too much. But it seemed to, although parallelly being a very short moment, shorter than death, but it appeared very long, longer than time, because it's like the intensity of that experience is able to stretch it beyond. By a power more ruthless than love, happier than heaven. So love is considered to be a power that love would not take any refusal. When there is love, it would not, I think very many times we can also take many trivial, so-called trivial day-to-day examples that, see, imagine that we want to invite somebody to a very special occasion, and that someone is very maybe precious to us, important to us. So we would do all our best that the person, irrespective of wherever he may be engaged, he comes to that occasion to give us blessings and all that. So love doesn't take any refusal. It will do maximum to make you convinced that this has to be done. So by a power more ruthless than love, and it's also ruthless, it won't, it's one can say it's cruel almost, more ruthless than love and happier than heaven, so full of this sweetness and happiness, taken sovereignly into eternal arms. So Ashwapati is taken completely into this divine, humongous divine being's arms, eternal arms. Hailed means, when you are dragging somebody. So this power is so great, the rush of this power that is now descended on in Ashwapati's being. It's like as if he's dragged by this power. Like his being is too little and fragile in front of this power that has descended, hailed and coerced by a stark absolute bliss. So usually whatever we experience in day-to-day consciousness is our little happinesses, pleasures, satisfactions, and this is absolute bliss, the intense absolute bliss. And the intensity is so much that it's kind of it's like dragging him. His being is not able to contain that ecstasy, the bliss. So that power drags him forcibly, the absolute bliss, in a whirlwind circuit of delight and force, hurried into unimaginable depths. So imagine, you have a little, maybe a kind of a ribbon in your hand, and a stone is tied to that ribbon. And since you are bigger and giant than the ribbon and the stone, you have the power to just whirl the stone around with your force that is there in your arm. So almost like that, I was imagining that almost like that, the power is so great that he's just whirled up and down, and wherever he goes, it's just an immense sea of delight. So although he is thrown here and there, but wherever he is thrown, as if it's an ocean of delight that he is access to, hurried into unimaginable depths, upborne into immeasurable heights, it was torn out from its mortality. So whenever we talk about tearing out, it's like, when we are tearing out our skin. So I am taking a part of my skin, it's completely one with the skin. Then I say, okay, I'm tearing out my skin, and it hurts. So his being was torn out from its mortality. This is how strongly mortality is glued to us, as if we are one with mortality. We cannot imagine that we are truly immortal beings. And I think last time we were talking in integral healing session that how this collective suggestion of death is so glued and imprinted in our consciousness that it's very hard to struggle against it. So we have to step back from that collective suggestion. So just like that, we are glued to our mortality, that okay, if I am a human being, I have to die. This is what happens after certain years. So I think this is a very beautiful imagery, that it's as if that his being, his true being, is that mask, that ignorant mask of mortality is taken away, as if a piece is taken away from flesh. That is how strongly we are rigidly associated with this mortal kind of thought and mortal living. So Ashwapati's being was liberated of this cover and coat of mortality. And not only cover and coat, because cover and coat still is on the outer side. it's like, really one part with us, and that is being torn out and underwent a new and bornless change. So this is a reference to what we were also reading in Letters on Yoga 3, transformation of nature through the descent of consciousness, divine consciousness. So although he has been going through many, many, many changes earlier, but again a new rapid change has come, where his being is lifted out of mortal limits, the rounds, patterns of constricted life, and released from the suffocation of mortality. Yeah, any reflections, anyone? Okay, so I'm moving forward, if not anything. Let's take one more passage, maybe. Yeah, anyone feels like reading?
An omniscient knowing without sight or thought, an indecipherable omnipotence, a mystic form that could contain the worlds, yet make one human breast its passionate shrine, drew him out of his seeking loneliness into the magnitudes of God's embrace.
Yeah, thank you. So in this seeking for the divine consciousness and in this sadhana, Ashwapati had to become quite all by himself, like alone, one can say. In when we compare it to our usual regular living, we are, I think this is a very commonly known phrase that man is a social animal. I think we have to rise above from that image. And when we do sadhana, we have to be in solitude for most of the times. It's not that we cannot interact. Of course, we interact and relate and everything. But this solitude, it's a path of a lone one. That inward path, for that we will have to let go of many, many, many social, seemingly important interactions if we are really, serious about it. Not serious in the sense of, tensing our brows and everything, but serious in the sense of that making something out of this precious human life that has been given to us. So in this seeking, Ashupati, since he had put away all everything else and was alone all by himself, the divine also came towards him with all its might and power and beauty and sweetness, and embraced him in such a fullness that now that loneliness did not exist anymore. So, an omniscient knowing without sight or thought, an indecipherable omnipotence, so all powerful, almighty, a mystic form that could contain the worlds, yet make one human breast its passionate shrine. So, the one who is ready, the divine grace, showers himself on that ready one. And it's not that the divine grace is not taking care of all the other ones. Of course, as in the beginning, Taru was sharing that each one is very, very unique and special, no matter wherever on our path. But parallelly, whenever a favorable ground is created, a patrata is created in an individual, then no matter how lonely that individual had been traveling on this journey, yet that mystic form can make one human breast, that which can contain the whole of worlds, all the realms, and it can all, give itself to one human breast. can make its passionate shrine in one human breast. So, as Sri Aurobindo shares, for those who give themselves to the divine also gives himself wholly and fully. So, it's a two-way process. We are not empty-handed at any moment. So, this embrace, this divine might and power drew him out of his seeking loneliness into the magnitudes of God's embrace. So all that loneliness and no interactions, and maybe something is as if one has to let go and sacrifice something, all that is fulfilled and taken care of. Yeah. Anything here? Anyone? So there is a very nice little um, essay by Nolini. I don't know if I have shared with you, which is very interesting since it refers to this loan thing that we were talking of. Just a second. Mm. So here is one of, I think, process of purification we had touched upon in one of the sessions. Again, it's very, very beautiful, and I would recommend. I think maybe we did it in Friday study circle, if I'm not wrong. Maybe Taru would remember. Taru, you remember where we did it?
Yeah, the document that you're sharing now.
I couldn't hear. Taru, did you say anything? Maybe something wrong at my end.
No, I was asking that the document that you're about to share now, you're asking me when did we discuss that? Was that the question? I can't hear you if you're asking. And the screen, I don't know, I don't even see the screen. It just keeps saying
Yeah, now is it working? Can you hear me now? Hello. Is it working now? Anyone? Okay, okay, good. Okay, anyway, so not going back to the thing again, but I was wanting to share this one, loan to loan. I think it's very beautiful how he shares here that it's a lone journey to the lone one. So the divine who is all by himself, and there is nothing but the divine, the soul, when it travels this journey to the divine consciousness, full union with the divine consciousness, that's a lone journey. So maybe we can take a few bits and then we can end the session today. Not everything, maybe it would be just too much. So I'll just go through a few things and maybe we can relate it to what we were reading in Savitri. So, therefore, in his spiritual aspiration, man has to divest himself of all the outer growths that cover and bury his soul. With the clear, unmixed vision of his pure soul, he has to look straight into the face of the divine transcendent, shredded too of his cosmic vesture, and rise from the station of ignorance. This level ground of clay, this mortality that we were referring to in Savitri, this level ground of clay to which it is pinned and soar and fly and merge into the pure reality of the pure spirit. Therefore, it is said, naked we come into the vale of tears, and naked we have to go back to our home. Or, in terms of another imagery, it is the pure pouring into the pure, the full mixing into the full. This true individuality is indeed a solitary being, true individuality referring to our psychic individuality. The true individuality is indeed a solitary being, away and apart from the crowd of personalities that surround it. It has been called by the Indian mystics the Purusha in the heart, no bigger than the thumb, the dwarf Godhead. So, this is what we see when Mother talks about the psychic being, and she gives us many, many, many hints and pointers at it. Mother says that it's seated deep in the heart, and of course, you cannot find it if you do a surgery in the heart, not in the physical heart, but in the depths of our heart center, horizontal depths towards the spine. When we go back, Mother says that it's seated angushtha matra purusha. That's where the psychic being is seated. So one point of meditation where we can place our attention is also deep in the depths of our heart, either remembering the Mother or just being with the breath, stationing our consciousness in the depths of our hearts. So that's the seat of Purusha in the heart, or the psychic being, the psychic individuality. So maybe we can take up this and the last bit, which by itself is very self-explanatory. I feel that it will be just nice to go through these lines, very, very revelatory lines. So if anyone would like to read it, I would request them to unmute and read.
When one is a member of the crowd, he has no personality or individuality. He is an amorphous mass, moving helplessly in the current of life, driven by nature force as it pleases her. Spiritual life begins by withdrawing oneself from this flow of ignorance and building up or taking cognizance of one's true person and being. When one possesses oneself integrally, is settled in the armature of one's spirit self, he has most naturally turned away from the inferior personalities of his own being and the comradeship also of people in bondage and ignorance. But then one need not stop at this purely negative poise. One can move up and arrive at a positive status, a new revaluation and reformation. For when the divine selfhood is attained, one is no longer sole or solitary. Beautiful.
Really beautiful. Yes.
So much we can identify with these lines.
Thank you. Yes, so this was really beautiful. And I think in the beginning we have to do neti neti. I don't want this, what others are wanting. I don't want that, what others may be asking me to want. So after this neti, 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 we arrive at our, he says that we don't have to stop at this neti, we don't have to stop at this negative poise. We actually totally become unified with our true individuality, the psychic being, which is a positive status. It's full of the qualities like love, devotion, good heart, goodwill, compassion, kindness, intelligence. So all that is the positive status which comes with the psychic individuality. So he says that we start with a kind of a solitariness, but it's not just solitariness, as we were able to see with Savitri also, that although he begins and for a long time he's beginning and running his journey all by himself, but feeling like really soul in this journey. But when the divine embrace is happening, then all that is taken care of. So indeed, the solitariness or loneliness that is attributed to the spiritual status is a human way of viewing that experience. Since we, as I was sharing, that we consider ourselves social beings, so all the time we want to be in the crowd and celebrations and all kind of things. So that's our human way of viewing the experience. So when we look at this lone journey, it appears lonely in that context because we are comparing it with the human way of looking at it. So that is the impression left on the normal mind consciousness when the Purusha soars out of it, upwards from the life of the world to the life of spirit. But the soul, the true spiritual being in the individual, is not and cannot be an isolated entity. The nature of the spiritual consciousness is first transcendence, means to arise as an individual into the ego individuality, the temporary individuality. So doing all the negation, the neti. So first we transcend out of that collective mass, but it is also universalization, since all of us are connected and interconnected with the presence of consciousness that all of us have. So when we unite, do the sadhana and unite with our true consciousness, it is impossible that we don't feel interconnected and united with all others around. So it's not as solitary as the human eye sees it to be. It cannot be, he says. It is not possible since we are all interconnected. So it is also a universalization, that is to say, the cosmic realization that has its classic expression in the famous mantra of the Gita: he who sees himself in other selves and other selves in his own self. This comes in Gita. In that status, own and other are not distinct or contrary things, but aspects of the one and the same reality, different stresses in one rhythm. So I think Sri Aurobindo beautifully shares, in one of the, I think in Isha Upanishad, he shares that and if there is another person out there who is Harishchandra and I am Devdutt, so he says, why should I be so delighted and rejoicing in Harishchandra's success and happiness? Because it is the same divine self in Harishchandra as in me. So the divine rejoices through Harishchandra as the divine rejoices through me. So when we do, I feel, this unification with our true consciousness, then it is impossible that we do not partake of that delight of interconnectedness that we all want to at many a times feel, that we are all one and united. Yeah. So it's anyway a beautiful essay, and those of us who are interested, they will find it on Incarnate World also, along with many other beautiful essays. Yeah, so any last comments, anyone? I'm sorry for the internet trouble today. I hope it didn't bother us much in between. Yeah. Anything anyone wants to add on? All right. So
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much.